Right, so I think we have a decent spread of expertise up on the panel, and this session we're dealing specifically with delays and subsequent cost of delays. It seems to be not just an African phenomenon, but it affects us quite widely across the sub-Saharan region. Everybody knows what happens in Nigeria, and we'll touch on that with Chris, who's been based there for a few years. Typically, this session would be a finger-pointing session. Who's responsible for the delays? Is it the design team? Is it the contractor? Is it the owner? Is it the banks? Who's causing the delays? Let's rather put a bit of a positive spin on it and try and work out how we can overcome the delays, how we can plan better and foresee these issues in the implementation. So talk us a little bit through from an operator's perspective and specifically from a technical services perspective. I mean, we always say bring the operator on board soonest for the obvious reasons. You need to know what you're designing, and otherwise you bring them in late, they're going to change things, it's going to cost you money. Give us your perspective, please, Andrew.
Yes, certainly. So, I mean, interesting enough, I had my team all gathered in Dubai 2 weeks ago, and we had a half-day workshop, and the subject was actually how can we help owners to open hotels more quickly. So basically it was a self-searching exercise of, what can we do better? How can we help owners? How can we improve the processes? What's happening on projects? How can we sort of turn around these projects to open earlier? And Mark, as you mentioned, certainly, I mean, one of the, say, challenges or more difficult situations is when the operator is brought in on a project very late in the day. So obviously, more often than not, the structure is up, or maybe, the partition walls are up, finishes are going in. So obviously there's a period, possibly a couple of months, where my technical team kind of have to step in and try and figure out how can we turn this project and align it with one of our brands, whatever we're looking at. Obviously, certainly, I mean, there's a certain amount of rework cost to the owner. We try to minimize that as much as possible. So we go through great efforts to try and see how can we sort of adapt in a way slightly our brands to work within that project. Obviously, there are certain things which we can't, really circle around, which is sort of anything which have things like signage, IT, fire, life safety, but if it's things like look and feel, the actual design, as long as the space planning works, we go the extra mile to try and, work with the owner and try and find the middle ground, and minimize the cost impact for him for the rebranding process, basically.
Okay. As an owner, you've opened and you're operating 9 hotels. Were any of those delayed in the opening from your projections and your planning? And what was the fundamental cause of any delay?
So far, since we started in 1994 to develop hotels, I think we have already had close to 15 projects, greenfields, refurbishment, extension, and I think we completed only 2 projects in time. Just to let you know how difficult it is to develop a hotel project on the continent. And usually I would say that the delays come from many sources. The first one is the mistake most developers make. They start a project before finishing all the design and all the technical studies. We did the same mistake. You finish the civil works design and you start, and then you continue working on the MEP design, which is a mistake. It's always good to finish all the studies before you break ground. Then you can shorten these delays. Some countries, like the landlocked countries, like Mali, Burkina Faso, you have transportation problems because I would say 99% of what is in the hotel is imported in our countries. And So you have to import from Europe, Asia, you go to the port, let's say Dakar, Abidjan, and you transport 1,200 kilometers to the Bamako or Ouagadougou. And then you have delays in custom clearance, which takes sometimes anywhere from 1 week to 1 month. So that's also a problem. We also have poor quality contractors. Our last project in Abidjan, we had to import a contractor from Portugal to do the job. We also have some poor quality studies. In our project in Abidjan, we had to stop the project to redo the land studies because the first one we had were not accurate. We were supposed to have 2 basements. When we broke ground, we saw that we could not have 2 basements, too much water. And the studies didn't tell us that we could not have 2 basements. So we stopped 3 months to redo all the studies. So these are the kind of roadblocks we encounter when developing hotels on the continent.
Yeah. Chris, from a PM's perspective, before we start looking at the positive spin and the alternatives, where do you see the bottleneck? What is causing delays in building hotels in Africa?
Yeah, Mike, I think it's actually quite simple, and it gets made quite complicated by a variety of issues. But I think there's 2 probably fundamental things: is that set your project up correctly from the beginning, and then your planning, as in actually in dealing with things like procurement and things like this. So in terms of the setup, one of the issues that's been raised is you get the right operator on board, you get the right consultants on board, and you do a proper, you can be prudent about which consultants you appoint. And we often find that whilst everybody's concerned about the budget at the outset, so they're trying to save $100,000 on one of the big consultants now, but he might save you millions, quite literally millions of dollars on the ground in terms of the structural design, for example.
Yes.
So, those are the challenges. But those are the spin-offs. If the planning is correct and the setup is correct, there's so many problems that are taken care of in that whole process. And then it makes it obviously easier for the project manager to manage, but it just then gets a lot more fluid. So that's probably one of the biggest things. I think the other thing is the procurement or the planning side of it. If you're in landlocked countries, even if you're on a seaport, there's challenges we know with customs that could take anything from 3 weeks to 3 months. So it's unpredictable, but you have to anticipate these things. So there's very simple little things which turn a very positive spin and make life very much easier, probably a whole lot cheaper as well.
Okay, well, we're getting some key issues out here. We're talking about logistics. We're talking about the skill set of the design team. We're talking about bringing the operator on board in time, because the operator is there to assist the owner. Yes, they come up with all of their restrictions and limitations, and this is what our brand stands for, and this is what... But ladies and gentlemen, as an owner, that's why you signed with that particular brand. So I think it's very important to have your communication with the operator and with their technical services team that are there to assist you, and speak to them. Get your planning done correctly. Have relevant consultants who have worked in Africa and do understand the challenges that we are faced with in Africa. Coming back to the logistics issue, the long lead items, I see it time and again. By the time the hotel operates, all the warranties are out of date. Your lift, your plant, no more warranties. How do we overcome this?
I think as an operator, I mean, we've got a responsibility towards the owner as well. And yes, certainly we've got our brand standards, but I think initially we need to make sure that our brands, our different brands, are actually tailor-made for the market. So, for example, we've got our Hilton Garden Inn and Hampton Inn brands at the moment, where, big drive into mid-market and budget market across Africa. And those brands have actually been tailored for the region. So actually these days, whenever we generate a new scheme, design, sort of uplift, a change to the brand, we actually generate three different schemes. One is for Europe, one is for the Middle East, and one is for Africa specific. So by going regional specific, you're actually helping the owner, because the brand, let's say the prototypical model, is being designed for the region in which it's going to be built. So I think that's a big advantage. So, in terms of area program, you're tailoring the area program to the region. One other thing you need to look at in terms of the area program, for instance, is it a city center property? Is it a remote location property? Obviously, if it's a remote location property, you need more storage, more cold room storage, things like that, because deliveries are less frequent. But if it's a city center property, you can go much more compact. You don't need such a large block of house. And obviously, this efficiency of scale is what will help the owner, because obviously it reduces cost. Hopefully reduces cost overruns as well during if there's poor design, and improves the efficiency once the hotel is open. So yeah, I think the operator has a big responsibility also in terms of the supply chain. I mean, you all know that most of us operators have our brand icons and specific items which we want in rooms or public areas, from particular suppliers. So one thing we focus on is having a regional source of suppliers. So I mean, yeah, if the brand was created in the States or developed in Europe, why do you need to ship in everything from Europe? Find local suppliers can produce the same product or a similar product which is acceptable for the brand. So obviously it reduces costs, it reduces shipping time, and makes life much easier for the owner and his construction team.
Chris, in terms of this issue with your long lead items and your heavy plant and your elevators and what have you, are any of the suppliers playing ball, or are they just taking the order, delivering it, taking their money, and say good luck to you now?
No, I don't think that's that prevalent in the market. Funny enough, I think there's quite a lot of cooperation. Obviously, going to always have chances, but I think it's fairly well serviced, and the guys are have quite a bit of integrity. You talk about the long lead items, for example. We all think that you've got to get the concrete structure up, or you've got to buy a plant, but everyone forgets about the doors, and the fire door, and it's got to come from here, whatever the case is, come properly packed, and it's got to be arriving at the right time so that your opening is the correct size. So it's, if again going back to the planning, a lot of the operators, especially when they've signed up with a brand, they have the brand standards, and they think, okay, well, I've got the design, and they've got a couple of sketches, and there's so much more to be done. There's a whole lot of ID to be done and detailed. And the rule of thumb, and again, it saves time, and it helps with the procurement process. It identifies what the critical path items as well. If you have a properly and a fully designed product, it's going to be the cheapest and most efficient to deliver. It's when you start with a schematic design and go out, you're going to do a $50 million project, and you've got literally a dozen drawings. You're obviously going to have overruns, and you're going to have time problems. So, again, those basic setups of planning, and it's just it just saves a headache for everybody. So there are challenges with suppliers, again, but there's plenty of people in the marketplace that are active and available. There's alternatives even which are acceptable to the brands as well. So it doesn't all have to come from Germany or whatever they expect from. So there's plenty of equivalent brands and acceptable. And again, you need the time to present this as whether it would be a material submission or a plant submission, and get the approvals done correctly. And it gives you time to then order and get the stuff in time.
Mossadeck, what lessons have you learned from opening the first hotel to now planning your 10th, 11th, and 12th?
Well, as I said earlier, for me, the key factor, as he just said, is planning. We learned the hard way because we started our first project in 1994 without any expertise in hotel development. So we learned the hard way. So do your planning before you break ground. Even if it takes time, that time you are spending on planning, you will gain it on implementation, on execution. Second, don't start piece by piece. Have all your planning, all your studies, and start the project as a whole. because all the components are related. As he said, when you start the concrete, you should know exactly what is the size of your door. Otherwise, you will have to come back and break your concrete to put your door. What type of kitchen you want to have, electrical or gas. You have to look at the local regulation. On our project in Dakar, we put the kitchen in the second basement with gas. And 6 months later that we knew that the local regulation forbids us of putting gas at -2. So we lost almost 3 months to redesign the kitchen at -1 and put gas at -1. So these are the kind of mistakes we could have avoided with proper planning. I also think that he is right. Maybe sometimes it's better to spend a little bit more on experienced consultant who have extensive experience in hotel design. We don't work anymore with consultants, be it architect, interior designer, MEP engineers, who do not have extensive experience in hotel design. We did that before and we regret it. So pick carefully the consultant you work with. If you have to pay them a little bit more, pay them a little bit more. I'm not doing a commercial for, for this guy, but it does help to have people who have experience because they can really give you the good advice to tackle all these challenges. Know the local regulations, custom clearance, transportation, local regulation. Know also your financiers' regulation. IFC is in the room, they have a lot of regulations. You have to know exactly what they are asking you as a financier. So if you do all this work before you break ground, then you will definitely save time in implementation, because don't forget, when you break ground, if you stop your project, let's say you stop 3 months because you have bad quality studies, when you come back to site, it will take another 3 months because the contractors, they have to redeploy the staff. They have to redeploy the equipment. So it takes another 3 months. So for one mistake in design, you will lose at least 6 months. 3 months because you have to redesign, and 3 months because the contractors have to redeploy staff and equipment. And one last thing, many projects are halted in Africa because of financing problem. Because developers think that, well, I have a land, I have a design, I have a little bit of equity, I start my project, and then I will seek debt. That's a mistake. Before you break ground, make sure you have completed your financing.
Absolutely.
Mark, just to pick up on one of the items there as well, and I mean, it's what we see on literally on a weekly basis, is get both in terms of your design team, your consultants, and their partners. They're not sitting that side of the fence and the developer this side. Everybody's part of this whole thing. So get a competent team together, who are individually competent within their own disciplines, but also in particular here in Africa, who have the experience here in Africa. So the world is full of very competent consultants, and you drop them in here, and it's a shock to their system. For a variety of reasons.
Don't understand the local
so
conditions.
There's a cultural things, there's local regulations and things like that. So, and it makes, and like Andrew was saying earlier, the operators understand that as well. So there is a flexibility, there's an understanding, there's still a requirement to achieve a certain standard, otherwise you wouldn't have a standard in the first place. But again, that makes a huge difference to the whole fluidity of the project.
There's another aspect of the project process which we shouldn't forget about. It's actually the last bit of the project, which is the testing, commissioning, and handover process. And more often than not, it gets, there's owners and owners teams underestimate the time required and I guess the technical expertise required at that phase of the project as well. I mean, we're looking at opening 6 hotels over the next 6 months. So my project directors at the moment are, flat out trying to help the owners and owners teams opening these projects. If you don't have proper testing, commissioning, when the operator comes in for final handover and when we do our own checks, obviously things fail, things don't work properly, or there's a massive amount of snags. Exactly. Snagging hasn't been done properly. This snagging hasn't been done, more often than not, an owner thinks, okay, the building's ready, kind of, contractor's moving out, that's it, hand it over to the operator. But actually, there's a big job, sometimes several months long, which needs to be done.
For the benefit of the audience, the pre-opening, we've gone through design, constructed, now we're going through pre-opening, where the operation side of the brand starts coming. How much in advance of your, let's even call it the soft opening, how much in advance of the soft opening would your ops team want to be on the property?
So, we actually, in Hilton, we don't talk about soft openings because we believe, as soon as you open your door for your first paying guest,
it's open.
It's open. Yeah. Guest is paying, has the right, whether you have 1 guest or 100 guests, you need to provide the service, the quality, the standards, and everything. So basically, we work backwards from the opening date. So, we've got the opening date. At least 6 to 8 weeks before the opening date, we have what we call the formal handover of the building. And that's where basically my team are very heavily involved, design and construction team, where basically we take formal handover of the building. We've done all the checks, we've been through the snagging, together with the operations team, and basically where we sign off the building, every single system, check certificates and all that. Basically we sign off the building, and then operations take it on, and you start your final deep cleaning, your unpacking of your operating equipment, distributing of your operating equipment, and lots of training of the team. So that on day of opening, the team is ready for the first guest.
So what are we looking at, 6 months?
So that's from handover to opening, it's roughly 6 to 8 weeks. Then moving backwards, obviously from handover moving backwards, our operations team would normally get involved at least probably 9 months before. Because there's obviously a lot of planning to be done from a commercial side, from a marketing side, setting rates, for the different type of rooms, establishing contacts on the market, business connections, things like that. So there's a lot of work, which is DGM, recruitment, training, etc. Exactly. Obviously, the team is also involved in the operating and equipment schedule list, identifying what items they need, crockery, cutlery, kitchen equipment, things like that. So obviously there's a lot of involvement from their end. And I would say probably at least 4 months, minimum of 4 months before handover, you really should be really well active, at least definitely having started your snagging process. And what we always recommend is your back of house and your rooms should be the most advanced on the project. Rooms, obviously, because you're going to have 100 to 100 to 100 of those rooms, so there's a large volume which you need to go through, which you need to snag and have, prepare for guest readiness. And the back of house, because obviously the team, as you start employing more people, you need to put the team somewhere. So the team can't stay off-site, they need to move into the building. So, we need to sign up fire life safety, make sure the building's safe, the team move in. More often than not, your sequence is sort of turned over. So you might have your public areas which are more advanced, and your guest rooms are not, and your back of house isn't ready. So then the hotel operating team is in a panic.
Yeah.
They probably have 20, 30, 40, 50 people on board, and they don't know what they're going to do with them. They can't train them. They can't even locate. They can't even feed them during the day. So it's these type of challenge. It becomes a major logistic or human challenge, really.
Okay.
Mark and I.
Let's move on from the consultant bashing and move on to the physical construction, the on site. What are the methodologies that are going to assist with the program, to reduce the program? I mean, is steel frame better than traditional block work, or is design build the key, and do we have design build experienced contractors in Africa? Hilton are very advanced with CIMC, speaking on modular. Chris, how do we reduce that program?
So there's a place and a time for each of those systems, whether it be the modular, as you mentioned now, or conventional, or a combination of those two, and steel or concrete. So there's a place and a time for everyone, and probably each one needs to be identified. I think we mustn't be resistant to new technology and new concepts and new ideas. There is benefits, and there will be more benefits as it goes down the road. But I think, one of the fundamentals, if you take a traditional sort of contract, it's so simple: get a good contractor. And you probably find that'll save you a year. Just on its own, because, and I say that facetiously because, a good contractor, he gives you a program, it's going to be 22 months or 24 months or 32 months. You're going to get pretty close to that, if all the other stuff is in place and etc. So it does make a difference where he may be more expensive, but if you take the time, another 12 months on top of that, your prelims, you're holding money for your debt that you're paying, your equity, loss of income, etc., probably far outweighs to get a decent contractor. So that's probably one of the fundamentals. But there is, go back to your other question, it is definitely a place for all these things, and I think we're seeing, as you say, the modular system is coming into, the first one will be shortly, I think in Accra. And so there is a place for this. I mean, on that particular one, it's basically 7 months of construction work, of traditional work, and another 7 months maybe, that sort of ratio, thereabout, of finishing the building off. So it's about 12, 14 months, and you've got a fully operational hotel from the ground.
I think you make a very good point, because horses for courses, and you can do certain things in some locations that you can't really do in the other locations. Mossadeck, you brought up logistics, the modular hotel construction, where even if it's only 120 bedrooms, for example, you're talking about up to, correct me if I'm wrong here, Andrew, 200 containers? Yeah. That now need to be lifted off a ship, put onto a truck, or preferably a train, because the roads are no good, etc., etc. So location.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all these type of construction, there are advantages and disadvantages. As far as we are concerned, we have been building conventionally. We have not tried yet the modular system. Although I stayed in a modular hotel in Dakar lately, which was very well done, the Yas brand from Mangalis. As he said, the key is to have very good contractors. If you choose to do a modular hotel, then have the good contractor. If you choose to do conventional, have the good contractor. Maybe it will cost you a little bit more, but you save time, and time in the hotel industry is a lot of money. We haven't tried yet the turnkey project. We are thinking about doing a turnkey project for our Niamey hotel, which is coming, hopefully by next year we will start building that hotel, and we're having discussion with a couple of big international contractors to try a turnkey project. We know that a turnkey project costs more, but you gain in time and in quality, and you have less headaches in coordinating many contractors.
From our discussion earlier, Andrew, it seems you also support the turnkey approach.
Yeah. Turnkey or design and build, both work well, and we've got a very good example of design and build project going on in Sierra Leone at the moment, which is going fantastically, to be honest. We've had another good example of sort of part modular and design and build in Dubai 2 years ago. We opened a 370-room Hilton Garden Inn next to Mall of the Emirates. And that was a design and build, took basically from breaking ground to opening was 18 months, 370 rooms. All the bathrooms were pod bathrooms, so basically the structure went up, partition walls went in, the pod bathroom was slipped in, and the facade was prefabricated as well. So the facade was in panels, and basically each guest room face was a panel. So the panels basically was prefabricated, obviously concrete, painted and everything, with the window already in place, everything, and just literally fixed onto the facade. But obviously, you need to tie in design to that. So there has to be a bit of leeway as well. If owners are thinking really big and they want a very, very fancy facade for a mid-market hotel, then obviously that's going to create more challenges apart from more cost. Wow. So the design really needs to fit your market segment in which you're working. I mean, why pour in extra thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in a very complicated facade? You don't need to for a mid-market hotel, or especially for a budget hotel. So it's all, you need to keep it level. And the other one is also obviously going the full way then to full modular. And we've got a good example in the Hilton Garden Inn being built in Accra to 186 keys, which is going to be full modular. So the moment they're constructing basically going up from basement to the ground floor. And at the moment, in the meantime, in China, CIMC, who's been the contractor which was awarded the contract, is constructing all the rooms. So my project director was in China 4 weeks ago. They did a mock-up room review, signed it off basically, and construction started. So basically, each container, which is not a standard cargo container, obviously, it's wider and longer. So each container is 2 guest rooms and a section of corridor in between. But those come complete. So complete to the sense of you've got your fan call unit with your pipes coming up to the shaft or up to the corridor. You've got conduit sleeves where you can run your fire cables through then and your data cables. The room's complete, carpet, bed, picture frames on the walls, your desk chair, every single thing is in the room. Everything's strapped down neatly, so nothing moves during shipping, But literally you practically just unpack the room. The shaft is also pre-assembled, so then all you need to do is connect from one floor to the other and run some services down your corridors.
And the advantage, of course, is quality control.
Quality, so exactly. So I mean, obviously,
inspected it long before it's even arrived.
Exactly. So apart from the challenge of maybe not having the right skilled tradesmen locally, in Africa and different parts of Africa, the other advantage is you're fabricating it under factory conditions. So everything's clean, neat, a conditioned environment or ventilated environment, so the workers are more comfortable, they're focusing more on their job, and obviously everything gets desnagged before shipping. So once they're on site, snagging is minimal at that point in time.
Yeah, I would like just to add that modular construction is not, I would say, less expensive in Africa because of transportation
cost. No, it's not a matter of cost.
But it saves you time for the developers.
And quality as well.
And quality, exactly. You save time and you gain in quality. But it's not less expensive than conventional construction. And just one more thing. On the pre-opening, we, at Azalaï, what we do, we like to have the GM on site at least 9 months before the hotel is opened. The middle management at least 6 months, so that the GM hires the middle management and the middle management hire the rest of the staff and start the training.
Do we have any questions from the floor?
Hello, I'm Andrew from Arene Design. Question for the other Andrew up there. You mentioned Sierra Leone, which of course we designed.
Yeah.
And the delay that you guys haven't touched on was of course the tragic outbreak of Ebola in
certainly,
Sierra Leone, which knocked us back a year, I suppose. Do you think that the contractor there, who you mentioned as Shapoorji, let's credit where credit's due, could they have done more to minimize the delay? I mean, they kept a small crew on site. Do you think they could have done more to minimize the delay?
To be honest, I don't think so. I think most of us didn't want to even step anywhere close to Sierra Leone. They actually had a team on site still. So, I mean, I applaud them for that, Obviously, they kept sort of the site ticking, but there wasn't really that much really that they could do at that point in time, even in terms of moving materials, people, It was a big challenge. I mean, it was a mega national crisis for Sierra Leone, certainly, But all I can say is that as soon as, the Ebola scare was over and everything, and the all clear was given, they moved in, and pushed ahead. I mean, there are other challenges on the project, but not necessarily, tied directly to them in terms of construction.
while I've got you there under the spotlight, any idea when it's going to open?
Yeah, well, we're hoping by the end of next year.
Okay, I'll be there.
Excellent.
Yes, there we go. Thierry?
Thank you. Just a comment quick on turnkey delivery of projects. I think, turnkey's, can you hear me? Can you hear me? No? No?
Can you?
Hello? Is that better? Just a quick comment on turnkey projects or project delivery. I think it's important to understand that you're effectively looking to shift risk from probably the owner to the contractor, and with that comes a certain amount of cost. But it's important in turnkey delivery that you do establish very clearly what the parameters of your project are, that you monitor what is being delivered by the contractor during his design stages, as well as during his construction stages, and then obviously during the commissioning phases. So it's not a case of I've got a turnkey contractor, I'll see you in 24 months' time and you're going to deliver me a hotel to the required standards. There's still a number of checks and balances that need to be put in place for that.
That's a very interesting point. You speak to anybody at FIDIC and they'll tell you that a turnkey contract was never designed for a hotel. And for very specific reasons, is that the operator needs to sign off on all stages, and a turnkey contractor does not allow such a thing. How do you overcome the peculiarities of a turnkey contractor with the operator's interface?
Well, I can say we're dealing with a turnkey project at the moment where we actually stepped in halfway during the course of the project, so we weren't even involved from the beginning. It was a bit challenging, but we managed to work our way through and kind of agree on what needs to be modified, not modified. I mean, I must say, the contractor, who was Turkish, was very, very cooperative with us, so we really worked with us, and obviously we try to use as much leeway as possible in it. But I think what's critical also in the Turkey contract is to have a very good design brief put together at the very beginning. So that defines, effectively your part of your, let's say, design scope of the project. So nobody has any surprises down the road, of what you get. You're expecting a luxury and you get a mid-market hotel or something like that.
So Mark, what's one of the challenges, on a turnkey, I think you require a substantial amount of confidence in your contractor.
Yeah.
Because you're quite exposed in some areas, other places it's convenient. So you can build in some checks and balances. You can have a small team of checking consultants, which is more watching brief, because the guy sees he's going to give you this particular product, and it looks and feels and touches and smells the same until you open the tap, and then it's not quite the same after 3 months.
Yep.
So it's those little things, and again, it's easy. It's something that can easily be put in place, and it's quite cost effective. But yeah, there is these challenges. The other thing, I'm yet to see a standard FIDIC contract on any contract. So the other book that you have is the 400 clauses of amendments.
Yeah. We are running a bit short on time. Are there any more questions from the audience? Andrew, I was interested in the earlier session to hear Mike Carlini mention that Hilton has a particular strategy for conversions. Yeah. Do you see that as a shorter delivery time? I mean, it has its own challenges, but...
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a way to grow your numbers and openings very fast. We've got two clear examples. By the end of this year, we're converting, rebranding to a DoubleTree property in Nairobi. And last week we just signed a property over here in Kigali, which we're hoping to rebrand by March, April next year. So it is fast, definitely. It's a couple of months, And if you have a good, committed owner, you can actually, get that conversion, that rebranding happening very, very quickly. There's certain stuff, like IT or signage, more often than not, you've got fire, life safety items and health and safety items related, which need to be done. The look and feel is
the MEP challenge?
The MEP challenge, so yeah, obviously, tied into the FLS as well, sort of, in terms of, whether it's sprinklers, fire alarm systems, water treatment, whatever. So, but, if you start off with a relatively decent hotel, obviously the gap's much easier to fill. But, I mean, that's the growth, and that's why we're targeting, with this $50 million fund, we're saying, basically our target is to sign 100 hotels and open 100 hotels over the next 5 years, because it is a quick turnaround.
Absolutely. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we have run out of time. This topic could go on forever, but that's all for today. Please feel free to grab any of the panelists afterwards for a discussion. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.